Annie? Robert cried out, his call echoing through the forest as if the trees were passing it around like a rumor. Annie, where are you? Jane listened as her husband's voice replied to itself. The forest was deserted. They hadn't seen another living soul for over an hour now. And that was the weirdest thing. No birds, no rabbits, no annoying mosquitoes or butterflies or bees, nothing. But most worrying of all for the paid, no Annie. They trudged on, and they had long since abandoned trying to reassure each other everything was going to be okay. No, their fear was impossible to mask now, even for George. I knew she wasn't ready to go out on her bike alone. I knew it, Jane muttered through frantic breaths. But no, you had to be the cool dad, the contradictory dad, always going the opposite way. I knew something like this would happen. I knew it. This is your fault. George grabbed her wrist and stopped her. Hey, enough. Even if you're right, it doesn't help anything. We have to stick together. That's the only way we find her. It's been 3 hours, George. Where is she? Where is she? Jane said as she fell into his chest, sobbing, angrily. He tried to comfort her. He normally could. But this was different. He was genuinely scared. And not just for his daughter. George had been terrified of the forest since he was a kid, hearing stories of strange, tall men that came out of the trees, of kids getting eaten by the Wendell Witch, and just a general atmosphere of, you are not welcome. Everyone felt it. The forest was just bad. Mommy? A soft voice called out. George and Jane immediately turned, searching for the source. It was Annie, undeniably. They knew their 8-year-old voice. They'd been praying to hear it for a while. Jane strode forward, her eyes darting, a manic smile growing. Annie? Baby? It's Mommy. Thank God, where are you? Silence. Just the echo of her own voice. George crept up close to Jane, scanning everywhere around them, but neither could see their little Annie. You heard her right? Jane checked. George nodded, staying quiet, listening desperately. The forest had fallen into its normal, deathly silence once again. Only the distant sounds of branches creaking in the breeze, the hum of the highway miles away. Mommy, Daddy, the soft voice called out again, definitely from nearby. The pair split, darting between trees, holding back tears of frustrated joy. Where was she? She sounded so close but was absolutely nowhere to be seen. George started scanning the trees above him, thinking she might be stuck up a tree. But she wasn't. Jane rushed to him, her face turning pale as her breathing became erratic. I don't like this. Where is she? I can hear her. Jane, she's here. She is. We just aren't seeing her. Mommy! It was louder, nearer, forceful. They turned, sensing the direction now, and Jane saw something. They walked towards it, the strange object on the ground that the setting sun had somehow reached through the trees, making it just a dark outline. As they got closer, they realized what it actually was. A small, innocent porcelain doll, a female with black pigtails matted in soil and grass, big eyelashes around blue eyes, her face smeared with muck. The doll sat upright on the ground, looking up at them, frozen in position, as if it was placed there on purpose. I didn't see that before, George muttered, as his eyes watched the trees grow shadows around them. We need to get back. Call the police again. We're losing light, Jane. Jane squatted down to the porcelain doll as if taken by its glistening eyes. Jane, come on, George said, beginning to shiver as a chill swept through the woods. Jane cautiously picked up the porcelain doll, which was somehow heavier than it should have been, but also as heavy as Jane expected it to be. She wiped some dirt from its face with her sleeve, as George gazed around, the evening really setting in and making the forest much more intimidating. He watched his wife, lost with worry about their missing daughter, becoming transfixed with the random only porcelain doll, just someone else's trash, and tried to hurry her. Baby, come on, there's no time for... Daddy, came a voice. I'm right here. Annie's voice, from very nearby, from Jane's hands, from the porcelain doll, and then it blinked. George really didn't want to take the doll home. Even though it was chatting away with his wife like it had known her all its life, he just couldn't believe that his daughter, his Annie, was now a doll. A porcelain doll. There was no logic to it, no rhyme or rhythm. He pinched his leg as they tread back through the forest. He had to wake up from this. What concerned him more, though, was how quickly Jane had adjusted to their daughter, now being a porcelain doll, that so far could only talk and blink, and given up on the search for their actual living human daughter. She was crying happy tears as they talked about what was for dinner that night. This is madness, George thought. He just wanted to turn back and continue looking for his missing daughter. He wanted to rip apart the doll and show his wife the recording device or voice box or whatever it was that was making that, admittedly convincing voice. But he felt powerless. He knew doing that might just trigger a psychotic break in his wife, unless she was already having one. As they approached the driveway, stomping the mud from their boots, night had well and truly fallen. George was emotionally drained and physically exhausted and wondered whether to ring the hospital after he called the police, get his wife sedated. But Jane stopped at the top of the drive, and he stopped with her. She was staring through the window into the kitchen. George asked her what it was, but she didn't reply. She was frozen to the spot, cradling that damn doll, which looked in the same direction. He stepped forward and saw what they were looking at. The lights were on. They definitely were not on when they left. It was daytime. She's back? He muttered excitedly. He started hurrying ahead, but felt Jane's firm hand grab his arm. Don't go in there, George, she warned. But she could be in there. Annie could be in there. Annie is right here in my arms. For fuck's sake. It's true, Daddy, the doll said. You shut up. Whatever kind of trick this is, you're not fooling me, George scolded the porcelain doll. But Daddy, I told Mummy, I found the doll, but she wasn't nice at all. I played with her, in the woods, but she said mean things, horrible things, things about you and Mummy, and then we swapped, whispered the doll. Swapped? George asked. She's bad. Not good, Daddy, and she's wearing my face like fancy dress, and I think she's in the house. Please don't go in, Daddy. George had lost all patience. He couldn't humor this anymore. He had to get inside, to see if Annie had found her way home. He prayed she had. Enough! He raged. As Jane sobbed in fear, stroking the doll, George charged to their house. He found the front door already open. It was dark inside, and quiet. He stepped inside and called out for Annie. There was no answer this time, though. He looked down and could see little muddy footprints, size 3 Nike Air Max, the right size, leading towards the light coming from the kitchen. He stepped through the dark, towards that warm light. George opened the kitchen door and let out a huge exhale of relief as he found Annie sitting at the kitchen table, covered in mud and dead leaves, with a frozen smile as she gazed at him with wet, unblinking eyes. Annie, thank God, he cried, his eyes watering as his emotions overwhelmed him. She just smiled, though, and didn't blink. And then he noticed she was holding a kitchen knife.